We will now discuss some concepts related to the time value of money. Let's start with the basics. Suppose you put $10,000 for 3 years in a bank that pays a simple interest of 10% per annum. Note that simple interest for each year is calculated on the initial amount of 10,000. Each year, the simple interest on your 10,000 deposit will be $10,000 into 10%, which is equal to $1,000. So you will earn $1,000 at the end of year 1, $1,000 at the end of year 2, and $1,000 at the end of year 3. The simple interest for the entire period of 3 years is calculated using the following formula. Simple interest is equal to principal into interest rate into period of deposit in years, which is $10,000, which is the principal, into 10%, which is the simple interest per annum, into 3. Answer is 3,000. The total amount you will get after 3 years is the principal plus the interest. Basically, you will get the principal plus principal into interest rate into period of deposit in years. This figure is basically the simple interest. You can take principal common and the formula becomes principal into 1 plus interest rate into period of deposit in years is the sum you will get after 3 years. Therefore, for your deposit, $10,000 into 1 plus 10% into 3, which is equal to 13,000. Basically, you will get $10,000 plus $1,000 plus 1,000 plus 1,000 at the end of the 3 years. If the period of deposit is in days, the formula changes to simple interest is equal to principal into interest rate into period of deposit in days divided by 365. Therefore, if you deposit 10,000 at 10% per annum for 450 days, the simple interest is going to be 10,000, which is the principal, into the interest rate, which is 10%, into the period of deposit in days divided by 365. That's 450 divided by 365, and you get 1232.88. At the end of the term, 450 days, you will get the principal, $10,000, plus the interest, which is 1232.88 approximately. Basically, you will get $10,000 plus 10,000 into 10% into 450 divided by 365, which is simple interest. If you take 10,000, the principal as common, you will get 10,000 into 1 plus 10% into 450 by 365. In total, you will get 10,000 plus 1232.88, a total of $11,232.88. Let's now look at the concept of future value. The concept is based on compound interest instead of simple interest. Suppose you deposit $10,000 for a period of 3 years at 10% per annum, but this time the interest is compounded annually. Basically, your interest is also going to earn some interest. Start with the year 0. Your principal is $10,000. So the 10% per annum interest is applicable on this $10,000. At the end of year 1, you will get $1,000 as the interest on the principal which you had at the beginning. So at the end of year 1, you will have $11,000 in your bank account. For the second year, this $11,000 is going to earn interest. So at the end of year 2, you will have the principal 11,000 plus 11,000 into 10%, a total of 12,100. Similarly, 12,100 becomes the capital or the principal for year 3. This is the amount you will have at the beginning of year 3. And at the end of year 3, you will have the principal 12,100 plus 10% interest on 12,100, a total of 13,310. So the total amount you will get after 3 years is $10,000 plus 3,310. $10,000 is the principal and 3,310 is the compound interest, a total of 13,310. The above can be generalized as the following formula. Future value is equal to principal into 1 plus interest rate raised to the power period of deposit. Basically, this total amount, principal plus interest, is the future value of the principal if it is invested at the interest rate for the period of deposit, where the interest is compounded. For your deposit, $10,000, the future value is $10,000 into 1 plus 10% raised to the power 3. This is similar to 10,000 into 1 plus 10% into 1 plus 10% into 1 plus 10%. Mathematically, they are the same. So the end result is $13,310. Therefore, the future value for annual compounding, the formula can be FVN, which is the future value of the investment at the end of n years, principal plus interest, into 1 plus k to the power n, where k is the per annum interest rate for the period and n is the number of periods for which the compounding occurs. For annual compounding, n is equal to the number of years. And PV is the present value or the principal invested at the beginning of the first year. The future value answers the following question. What amount will I get back if I invest the present value or the principal at k% interest for n years? Note that the interest is compounded. Also note that the number of periods here is the same as the number of years because the compounding is annual. Coming back to the $10,000 deposit, if the compounding is done quarterly or 4 times in a year, the total amount or the future value at the end of 3 years can be calculated using this formula. FV is equal to PV into 1 plus K divided by M raised to the power M into N. Here, PV is the principal, FV is the future value, M is the number of interest periods in a year, and N is the number of years. If M is equal to 1, the formula becomes the same as that for annual compounding, which is FV is equal to PV into 1 plus K to the power N. For our deposit, if the compounding is quarterly, we have the $10,000 as the principal or the present value. Period N is 3 years. The number of interest periods in a year, M, is 4 because the compounding is quarterly. So the periods of compounding in n years is M into N, which is 4 into 3. We have 12 periods. And the annual compounding interest rate is 10%. Therefore, the quarterly rate is equal to K by M, which is 10% divided by 4, which is equal to 2.5%. Therefore, the future value of $10,000 after 3 years, if the compounding is quarterly at the interest rate of 10% per annum, is FE12, which is for 12 periods, 10,000, which is the present value, into 1 plus 10% divided by 4, same as K by M, which comes to 2.5%, raised to the power 3 into 4, which is the total number of periods for which the compounding is done in the 3 years. The answer is 13,449. If you remember, if with annual compounding, FE3, for 3 years, 3 periods of compounding, the answer was 13,310. Therefore, the more frequently you do compounding of the interest, the higher is the future value. From the future value formula, we can get the present value of the single cash flow. Future value is equal to present value into 1 plus k divided by m raised to the power m into n, where m is the number of interest periods in the year and n is the number of years. If we rearrange this formula, present value is equal to future value divided by 1 plus k by m raised to the power m into n. Basically, we are discounting the future value by k by m interest rate for m into n periods to arrive at the present value. The present value helps you answer the following question. How much money should I invest today at 10% per annum compounded annually to get 13,300 after 3 years? The present value is 13,310, which is the future value, divided by 1 plus 10% raised to the power 3, which comes to 1.331. The denominator is 1.331. Therefore, the present value is $10,000, which we know is correct. Note that in this formula, we have taken m equal to 1 because the compounding is annual. Therefore, the formula is the same as that for annual compounding. If someone promises to give you 13,310 after 3 years and the current market interest rate is 10% per annum compounded annually, the 13,310 is worth 10,000 in today's terms. Likewise, receiving 13,310 after 3 years is the same as receiving $10,000 today and investing it at 10% per annum annually compounded interest. So based on same terms, if someone tells you that he will give you $12,500 after 3 years, if you give him 10,000 today, you can refuse and you can tell him that you can get a better return yourself by investing that $10,000 for 3 years at 10% per annum compounded interest. Let's discuss the concept of compounded annual growth rate, or CAGR. The CAGR is the effective rate that is earned on the initial cash flow. The CAGR is the interest rate which will help your money grow from a known present value to a future value in m into n periods. Basically, you know the future value, you know the present value, you know m, which is the number of times the interest is compounded in a year. You know n, which is the number of years in the time period, and you can calculate the compounded annual growth rate. For your $10,000 investment, if the compounding is quarterly and the interest rate is 10%, you know that the future value, which we had calculated earlier, is 13,449. You divide that by the present value 10,000 and raise that to the power 1 by 12, which is 1 by 3 into 4, and subtract 1. You will get 0.025 or 2.45% quarterly, which we know is correct.